Morning, the old man here, August 28th, 2025. I've been wrestling with something I wanted to try to explain. It's something I didn't realize for years and I guess where I want to start is that the dollar is thought of as money, and it is not. It is a currency. To be money, it has to have many factors, but the main one is it has to hold value. And it doesn't. Right off the bat, the central bank, the Fed of the United States, will tell you that it loses value by 2% a year planned in. That's what they plan to fleece you out of if you're holding dollars. Basically, the charge for letting you use their dollar system is 2% off the bat. And that's what they claim, when in reality, it is much more than that. When you figure in things like taxes and whatever else that you pay because you're using that dollar system, Rick Rule will argue that it's 7 to 9%. Well, I'd say it's all of that. So, in other words, they're charging you 7 to 9% a year to use their fake fiat currency. It is not money. Let's say that. It cannot be money. It will be not, since we've been taken off the gold standard, officially off the gold standard in 71, when Nixon temporarily took us off the gold standard. If everybody knew that, and if I knew that, I would have de-dollarized a long time ago. Now, mind you, I live in the dollar system as much as I have to. We all do. Wages come from you're paid wages in dollars. I own my own business, and I'm paid in dollars, whether that's through a credit card company or somebody hands me cash or somebody hands me a check. I'm accepting dollars, fake fiat currency, because that's the system we work in right now. I personally take that fake fiat currency, pay my bills, whatever those may be, including, repairing vehicles or whatever I have to do, but whatever bills I have for that month, I pay with the fake fiat currency because that's what we got to work with. And then the rest I convert to money, real money. And what is that? That's gold and silver. Gold, since the lows of 2001, has, in dollar terms, had a 13.25x. It's up 13.25 times the 2001 low, of which was 256 per ounce. That was the bottom of the dollar in recent times in 2000. Or, excuse me, that was the bottom of gold, not the bottom of the dollar, but the bottom of gold in 2001. Recent times, that was the low. We are up 13.25 in dollars. When measuring in dollars, it is up 13.25 times. In reality, to put that more correctly, the dollar is down 13.25 compared to gold. If you measured the purchasing power of the dollar, has fallen by 13.25% or 13.25 times what it used to buy. Same thing with silver, except for a little less. Silver is up in dollars, price-wise, up with current, this is rough, it's not exact, but it's roughly 9 times since the low of 2001. Gold and silver is money. It has held its value, or it's held its purchasing power. That's what so many people don't understand, is purchasing power. True money, gold and silver, has never changed since the beginning of time. Since we've started using gold and silver as money, it has always held its value. It's a constant. What falls is the dollar, or the fiat currency, or currencies, I should say, across the world. All monies across the world today, to my knowledge, I don't know of any that's backed by gold. All monies today are fake fiat currencies. And the general public are starting to lose their confidence in those currencies. That's part of the reason why you see the dollar, or what they call inflation. In other words, a dollar buying less, is because people turn them dollars over faster. They're de-dollarizing it, even if they don't realize it, that they know that their dollar is going to buy less tomorrow than it does today, so they're turning it over as fast as they can. Also, part of that is the economy. They bled so much out of the economy, regardless of what they tell you it is. They bled so much out of the economy that people are forced, in some cases, in quite a few cases actually, to turn over the dollar faster. Not necessarily because they're worried about it being worth less, but that's all they've got. In other words, they're working from paycheck to paycheck. Most are over leveraged. Most are at the edge. A good percentage of the people are at the edge. They have no more purchasing power. They can't borrow any more money. That leaves us in a very, very bad spot. You'll see credit card loans are getting farther and farther out as far as being delinquent. Home payments are getting farther and farther out as far as being delinquent. House or car payments are getting farther and farther out. Student loans are, more and more people are defaulting and or getting farther and farther out. Now, I realize at the end of the day, you can't really default on a student loan, because no matter what happens, you're going to owe it. Whether, even if you lose your job, you still owe the money. You can't file bankruptcy and get rid of your student debt. You're always going to have your student debt. So, but realize this: they're getting farther and farther behind. They are not keeping up. Part of the reason why the Biden administration did not allow, or I should say, allowed people to not pay their student loans, was to make the economy look better than it was. Instead of putting your money, let's say you got $150 a month you got to pay on student loans, they wanted that $150 to go into the economy instead. So that's why they put a stay on student loans. They also did the same thing with rentals and that. Now, if you had a house payment, you had to make your house payment, but they couldn't kick you out. So, in the people that were too far behind and they really couldn't make their house payments, they could still live in that house. You couldn't kick them out. And same thing with rent. If they were really behind in rent, you couldn't kick them out. And part of that reason, again, was they didn't want that many more homeless people. They wanted that money, whatever it was they were spending on rent, to stay in the economy. So, these fake fiat numbers, everything has to be, the books have to be cooked no matter what to make the system work. And the system we've had since 1913 with the Federal Reserve. So since then, we have been cooking the books, and it just snowballs and compounds over the years. And honestly, we're towards the end. I can't say we're at the end, but we're towards the end of a fake fiat currency system. Uh, the Bidens were telling you, and during that administration, everybody was telling you how great the economy was. Yet everybody's sitting around going, I ain't got a freaking extra dollar to work with at the end of the month, but they wanted you to think there's something wrong with you, not something wrong with the economy. So part of the reason I bring this up is that if you are a stacker or you're thinking about stacking and you think, well, I'd be lucky if I can buy an ounce a week or maybe even just a couple silver dollars a week or a couple silver dimes a week. Well, what difference can that really mean? Well, it honestly does make a difference on a large scale. If more, and we will see more and more people go to silver and or gold. I think the average Joe at the moment couldn't even, statistics say the average Joe can't save enough money in a year to buy an ounce of silver. He does, or I mean gold, excuse me, an ounce of gold. And in fact, the average family can't afford uh, to save and buy a half ounce of gold, to tell you the truth. So I think that's where you're going to see a lot of people go to silver, and that's why I think the silver has much more upside than gold. Although if you want to hedge your bets, go with gold. Gold's a given, pretty much a given. It is the best money there is. It will hold its value. Silver will have spikes. If you think that you may need to cash in on that silver at some point, then maybe you want to think more about gold than silver. Because if you got to cash in, you might cash in at a bad time when in one of the low spikes instead of one of the high spikes in the price of gold or in the price of silver. However, with that being said, there may be a time where the dollar hyperinflates and silver will be money again, circulated, even if it's not officially a money. It will be accepted by the local farmer, the local merchant. It's not going to be accepted by Walmart. It's not going to be accepted by the big box stores. But your local merchants are going to accept silver. They may not today, but at the end of the day, when they're forced between throwing produce out or selling it for silver, they'll sell it for silver. And then they can turn around and barter their bills away. Even if you can't pay consumer powers, you can sure as hell put a wood stove in and pay the guy that's cutting and splitting wood. So there will be a local, at the very least, a local commerce for gold and silver, and I'd say mostly silver. If you're buying land, if your intention is to buy land, then maybe gold's a better bet or something larger. But when it comes to everyday necessities, and that's what most people are going to be worried about, is everyday necessities, um, silver is going to be the better bet. And it's well known that gold leads and silver follows. And silver will at some point, I think, in the near future, but that near future could be months, that near future could be even a year or two away. Who knows? Who knows really? They will continue to try to kick the can down the road, and they will to some degree. But at some point, people are waking up across the world that the dollar is a currency and not a money. So they're de-dollarizing where they can. They still need dollars to pay their bills. Even if you've got a loan in another country, more than likely that loan is in dollars. Therefore, you still need dollars. You need to sell your product, whatever that is, for dollars to pay your loan. So that will continue to go on for a while. But they won't stack dollars. They'll have dollars just as much as they need to pay their bills, just like me. I have just enough dollars to pay my bills. My backup I don't even worry about, so many people worry about having, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in cash for backup. I don't even do that. I've got a credit card that's $3,500. I don't use it except for emergencies. I mean, don't get me wrong. I put gas on it and things like that to keep it current. But at the end of the month, I pay that off. So if an emergency comes up, I basically got $3,500 worth of credit I can use that'll get me through any month for sure. Okay, maybe 2 or 3 months as far as that goes. If things start to go sideways, you can really clamp down and make that $3,500 go quite a little ways. Even with inflation, it's still going to go a ways. And I can always pay that $3,500 rather than defaulting on the loan. I can always sell silver and pay that loan off. But my emergency is that credit card. Even if it happens over the weekend and I'm not able to sell my silver over the weekend, so I wait till Monday to sell it. But in the meantime, I put it on a credit card. I can sell it and pay that bill on Monday. It's not a big deal if I really have to. That credit card is my backup. But that's strictly all I use credit for is a backup. That's it. Short term, very short term credit. And I wouldn't even wind up paying any interest on that. If I charged something on Sunday and paid it on Monday, there's not even going to be any interest on it. If there was, it'd be pennies, not much. So that's my emergency backup. Other than that, I turn everything into silver as fast as I can. I have bought gold. I bought lots of scrap gold and watched gold make a $500 run while silver was basically standing still. It wasn't doing very much at the time. And when it made that $500 run, I would take some of that gold and cash it in, basically trade it for silver while silver was still lagging behind. And then silver would make a run, and then gold would make a run, and as gold made that run again over silver, I would trade more gold for silver. I've got my gold holdings down to, I basically traded off all my scrap gold. I've traded for silver, did fairly well on that, kept my premiums down. In fact, I paid no premium on the gold. And the silver I bought, I paid no or next to no premium on that when I traded. So we're in pretty good shape there. Just keep that in mind, that the money is made when you buy, not when you sell. When you buy, you got to buy right. Buy the lowest premium silver. Right now, if you hunt around, you can find junk silver below spot. That's a pretty damn good deal. We have very low to no premiums at the moment. That's almost unheard of. But that's the times we're coming to, or those are the times we're in, where more people are selling than buying. Therefore, the premiums are extremely low because so many people are selling versus buying. So the premiums are going to stay low as long as gold and silver is making big moves. So you can count on that. At some point, gold and silver is going to plateau, and then you'll start to see the premiums rise, or we'll have a banking failure or something like that, like we did with Silicon Valley Bank. When something like that happens and everybody panics and decides they have to have silver tomorrow, then you're going to see your premium rise because the chain of silver is going to be broken and it's going to be hard to get for a while. Not impossible to get. It's out there. You can get it, but it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks to get. Maybe if you had to order from JM Bullion because your local guy's out, it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks to get it. And if he's got to order from a wholesaler, it's going to take him 4 to 6 weeks to get it. Maybe longer. If the panic is bad enough and long enough, you might be waiting 2-3 months to get your silver. I'd hate to pay for something like that much money and wait 3 or 4 months when you can go to the local coin shop today and pick up pretty much whatever you want instantly and take it home and don't have to worry about it getting lost in the mail or somebody not paying you because he went bankrupt or or you're not getting your silver for some damn reason, you can walk in, get what you want, walk out, and pay next to no premium. Can't beat that at all. Don't make the mistake of buying pretty coins and paying a big premium, thinking it's going to make a difference at the end of the day. Silver is silver, gold is gold. Plain and simple. I buy gold, scrap gold I was buying at spot at the time. When American Eagles, you might pay $90 to $100 premium. I could buy that at spot. I watched it make a $400 or $500 run, and then traded it for silver, and took it. I got 92% of value after it made the run. So that's a damn good trade if you ask me. And so I up my silver ounces by buying gold first and then trading it for silver. I plan on the next, I believe, the next run is gold's going to make another run. Now, I could be wrong. Silver, it might be silver's time. I don't know. But I believe gold's going to make another run. I got a fairly significant little stack of foreign gold coins for the most part. Again, it's something I bought for either very, very low or no premiums. And when that gold makes another $400 or $500 run, of which I think is going to be quick, when it happens, I think it's going to make a fast run, and I think silver is going to catch up within a month or two. Also going to make that same or near same percentage of run. Let's say it makes a 20-25% run over the course of between now and the end of the year, and then silver will catch up and also do the same thing, either by the end of the year or by the end of the first quarter of 2026. But at any rate, when gold makes that next $400 or $500 run, I'll be trading the rest of my gold for silver. And the reason I'm doing that is because the general public has almost no silver. It's ridiculous how little silver they have, and therefore most of them have currency. In other words, even if they've got a stock portfolio, that stock portfolio pays out in dollars. And if the dollar is devalued by 40 to 50%, it could be easily. If it is, then their purchasing power has been cut by 40 to 50%. The other thing you might see is the stock market cut by 40 to 50%. And right now, they are being set up. Retail is being set up by the big boys, the big players. They're being set up to take the fall. Guys like Warren Buffett and that have been getting out for the last 2 years slowly. Insiders of NVIDIA, Facebook, Amazon, and others are NVIDIA. I said NVIDIA. Our insiders are cashing out. They're moving to something else. Well, I think I know what that something else is, but whatever. There's no proof of that. But they're getting out while the bubble's high. They can see what's coming, and they're going to buy another asset that's going to hold its purchasing power. And that's why you're seeing gold and silver make such good gains. You take gold and silver since the beginning of the year is up. Gold is up 28.5% since the beginning of the year. Silver is up 28.5 to they say 32.1%, somewhere in there. Let's call it 30%. Okay, so silver's slightly outperforming gold at the moment. Since the first of the year, not enough to talk about really, but it is a little bit. And that's pretty easy to do because silver's such a small market compared to gold. Central banks are buying a lot of gold, pushing the dollar or pushing the value up, or pushing the dollar value up on gold, that is. But silver is doing its own to stay on track. Remember that like I said, gold is at, since 2001, is up 13.25 times its price, and silver is up 9% or 9 times since 2001. That means silver's got some catching up to do. It also means that silver's been repressed more than gold. And a lot of people I know are going to say, well, there's no way they've manipulated the markets, since 71. Well, they've been manipulating the markets. When you're on a fake fiat currency, everything has to be manipulated. Housing, food, you name it, price of cars, everything has to be manipulated, but especially the money. I didn't say currency, although the currency is manipulated as well, but the money has to be manipulated. If gold and silver shows too good a run in any time frame, people are going to back out of whatever they're investing in, whether that be housing or that be manufacturing or banking or whatever. If it makes too good a run, they're going to come out of that and go to gold and silver. What did I just say it did? It made a hell of a run. You can't invest in anything else today that has made a 20, let's say 28% to 30% run since the beginning of the year. And I know that's a short time frame, but look at what it's done since 2001. So this is a 25-year trend. It's just now starting to make bigger moves. That's what you need to recognize, is the bigger moves. Okay, it's been steady at about 9% overall over the last 5 years. Some will say somewhere between 9 and 10% over the last 25 years or 24 years. This year being the 25th year, she's starting to take off. That means as investors look at their portfolio and go, this stuff ain't doing shit. Maybe let's say my S&P went up by 10%, and according to this, S&P's gone up by 9.95% since the beginning of the year. So my S&P's gone up by 9.5%, and gold's is up 28.5%. What's doing better? That's a no-brainer. And maybe they don't sell off all the rest of their S&P, but they sell off 20% of it and go to gold. Or they sell off 20% of it and go to silver because, like me, they think silver is going to make a bigger move at the end of the day. And same thing with the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is up 11.32% since the beginning of the year. And gold and silver is up, let's say, 28 to 30%. Well, again, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to take some of my money out of the NASDAQ. Maybe not all of it, but I'm going to take some of my money out of the NASDAQ and put it in gold and silver. Some will say that maybe gold and silver is in a bubble. No, not even close. There's all kinds of signs of being in a bubble. This ain't it. This ain't it at all. In fact, gold and silver is moving up to the point steadily that the bullion banks aren't going to be able to suppress it much longer. Again, to support the dollar, they had to especially suppress gold and silver. They've suppressed and manipulated everything across the world as far as that goes in a fake fiat currency, but they have to manipulate gold and silver money, true money, God's money, more than anything else, to keep people from leaving the currency and going to money. And they've pretty much lost it this year. Last year actually was the first year that we started to make a really good run where we were up 20-some%. I don't remember where it finished at. I think it was around 24%. This year's already made a 28% run. I think we're open. Not say it's going to happen, but I think we're open to do another 28%, maybe 25% by the end of the year. It's just the way things are adding up. Now, maybe it won't go up that much, but hey, even if it goes up 10 more % by the end of the year, and the NASDAQ goes down by 10 by the end of the year. So NASDAQ you're even on, and gold and silver you're up by 30, actually 40%. That's just going to compound it. People are going to de-dollarize more and more. And when I say de-dollarize, that just means that all they do is, I mean, they sell anything that's derivative of a dollar, like stocks. They sell that stock, take their dollar, get rid of their dollar, and buy gold and silver. That's all they got to do. And that's de-dollarizing. Now, central banks across the world have been de-dollarizing especially since 2019, but actually since the turn of the century, or 2001, let's say. They've been de-dollarizing, but at a faster pace since 2019. And what happened in 2019 is gold was made a tier one asset in 2019. And prior to that, the US dollar was the only tier one asset. What does that mean? Well, on their books, a tier one asset is held on their books dollar per dollar. Okay, but if you're a tier three asset, of which gold was, for every dollar you got in gold, you only got 85% of that on your book. So in other words, if you got $100, and I know that's a stupid figure, but let's just say if you had $100 on your book, you're only showing $85. Or if you had $100 of gold, you could only show $85 on your book. So a tier one, you need to have some tier three assets, you do, but they want mostly tier one assets, and that's what their foundation is built on, is tier one assets. And then you go down the line to diversify, sure, but with the dollar and gold being tier one assets, and the dollar having counterparty risk, especially where the United States keeps printing money and finding different ways to devalue the dollar, and gold doesn't. Nobody can do that to gold. In fact, with gold, the best they can do is encourage their citizens to have more gold, and that just pushes the dollar up. They could try that now. They could try to get people to go to the dollar versus gold. And yeah, they got to stay in the dollar to some degree. I realize that, because a dollar derivative loans across the world, they have to have dollars to some degree. But you can bet your ass, as those loans are paid off, their next loan, they're going to make in gold and silver. They're not going to make in dollars. They're getting rid of those loans as best they can. As their dollar or their T-bills or banknotes mature, they're going to get rid of them and buy gold and silver. In the case of, let's say, Japan and in China, they've been talked about lately that they were de-dollarizing. Well, yeah, they were de-dollarizing because they were forced to prop up their currency. Okay, they had to sell dollars to buy more of their currency to prop their currency up. They weren't doing it to spite the United States. They were doing it because they had to, because their economies were crashing. At some point, they run out of dollars. They got gold, and they back their currency up with gold. At some point, when their currency starts to hyperinflate, that's exactly what they're going to have to do, is back it up by gold. And that's what, well, for sure, that's what China's doing. And I think to some degree that's what China's doing, and all central banks across the world are doing, is backing up the currency with gold. Silver being such a small market, it doesn't need central banks to buy it to push the dollar up, or excuse me, to push silver up. Enough on that. I know a lot of people are talking about Bitcoin. I'm not against Bitcoin. I think there was a time. And in fact, during the last cycle, I bought Bitcoin when it was like $45,000. I rode that bitch all the way to the top, of which was I think 72,000. Then rode it all the way back down to 15. It was only 15 for a minute, but whatever. It went down to 15. I could have bought, for the longest time, I could have bought around 20,000, and I didn't. After riding it all the way up and then back down again, I'm like, man, I don't know. But I held on to what I had. I held that till it was at 90,000, which means I doubled what I had into it. I put 7,000 in, took 14,000 out. And what I did is I traded that directly to SD Bullion, SD Bullion. They accepted Bitcoin, and I bought junk silver with it. I went right to junk silver. I didn't, cash it out and then turn around and buy junk silver. I just went right from Bitcoin right to junk silver, cut out the bullshit in the middle. And even though it's gone to $120,000, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, why is Bitcoin at 120,000? Now, I know they call it digital gold and all that bullshit. When in reality, here when Bitcoin was $20,000, there was roughly an $800 billion market cap. Today, there's $2.2 trillion market cap. How did we get there? Well, it wasn't natural. It wasn't from the everyday Joe investor putting his hard-earned money into Bitcoin. What it is institutional money through ETFs coming in, buying Bitcoin, but they're also leveraging it. What is that going to do? That's why the S&P, NASDAQ, the Dow is in such a bubble, is because of leverage or borrowing currency to buy more Bitcoin. That's how we got to 2.2 trillion. It's not natural. It wasn't built by somebody. It was pushed by somebody. And somebody's being set up. And that's retail for a hell of a loss at some point. When they pull the rug, I don't know. Is it all going to come crashing down? I don't know. Is it going to come down slow? I don't know. It's hard to say. Is it even going to melt up? In other words, does the numbers go higher because inflation's getting higher? Your dollar is buying so much less that the numbers are actually going up, but the numbers are going up slower than inflation is actually going up. So in reality, you're losing purchasing power. If it goes to $150,000 of Bitcoin, but your purchasing power on that 150,000 is what 80,000 is today, then you're behind. You're not ahead. But most people don't understand the math. That's the problem. I think that's about all I got to say today. I mean, we're running 40 minutes. I know that's an awful long time for everybody to stay to the end. We're at 38, 35. Let's call it 40 minutes. I appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe and leave a comment. If nothing else, leave a comment at 40 minutes. I just want to know how many people made it to the end. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Keep on stacking. It's a hard road ahead. Have a good day.